The Legend of Zelda is weird. Sure, it's an epic adventure series full of legendary heroes and ancient evils, but let's be honest, some of the places in these games feel like they belong in a fever dream. From unsettling grottos, to ridiculous attractions, to locations that seem just a little off for all the wrong reasons. Today we're diving into the strangest location in every mainline Zelda game. So grab your map, put on your weirdest mask, and let's dive into the strangest, most head-scratching locations in the Legend of Zelda series. Picture this. You're adventuring across the pixelated landscape of Zelda 1, battling moblins, dodging Octoroks, and then you stumble upon this. Wait, what? A letter we need to deliver to an old woman? What does it say? And why does this guy have it? No concrete explanation, no backstory, just an old dude in an empty cave giving Link a letter, demoting him to the most inferior position in the Legend of Zelda social hierarchy. The mailman. Okay, so what does the letter even do? Well, if you take it to one of the potion shops, the old woman's shopkeeper suddenly decides, oh, now I can sell you potions. So let me get this straight. This guy was just holding onto a prescription this whole time? How does this system work? Was the old man a doctor? Is Link not allowed to buy potions without a written note? This is some bizarre medieval bureaucracy. And here's the weirdest part. After he gives you the letter, he eats himself into another dimension and disappears completely, never to return again, even if you try re-entering the cave. Was giving Link that letter his entire life's mission? Does he just live in this cave waiting for some random kid to show up so he can finally complete his life's goal delivering a piece of parchment and then ascend to the heavens? And it's not like we're ever given a hint as to what's written on the letter, so we have no idea what we're actually delivering to the old woman here. The old man could very well be asking Link to deliver divorcement papers to his old biddy of a wife, and the old guy disappearing symbolizes him finally being freed from needing to gander at her toothy grin any second longer. And I don't know. Maybe her selling you potions is her trying to clear out her now ex-husband's liquor cabinet. Who knows? I don't know what these guys were thinking. Zelda 1 is full of weird locations. Secret gambling dens. Talking moblins who bribe you with money so that you don't spill the beans about their whereabouts. Locations and dungeons in the second quest where you can literally get your heart containers taken away permanently if you don't have enough rupees. But this cave where you obtain the letter? It takes the spot as the weirdest location in the game for me. What's that old man's backstory? What does the letter say? Are the old man and woman related to each other? So many unanswered questions. So with that, let's move on to the next game. At its core, Zelda 2 is a weird game compared to the other entries in the Zelda lineup due to its unorthodox side-scrolling RPG-like experience. Much of the game consists of you traversing challenging caves and dungeons, killing brutally difficult enemies. But there's a few weird towns that I want to discuss as being strange location candidates. An honorable mention goes to two towns where we have Old Kazuto and New Kazuto. The story goes that Old Kazuto used to be a bustling, vibrant town full of people, but after their home was overrun by Moas, these flying ghost eyeball creatures, they fled to New Kazuto to make a new home for themselves. The player is first introduced to Old Kazuto, where we experience our first bit of weirdness upon reading the sign posted at the entrance of the village. Kazuto. Strange. It is deserted. Very strange indeed. Although I find it even stranger that the sign is somehow self-aware that there's nobody in the village, but alright. The town isn't actually deserted, where we have invisible enemies flying around that can damage Link, and upon searching inside one of the dilapidated buildings, we find an old man who explains that people of the village fled to a hidden town in the East Woods. It's bizarre that, despite the town being abandoned and overrun, this one old man is still there, waiting for a hero to show up. Was he left behind? Did he stay behind on purpose? Why would he purposely stay in such a dangerous place? We may never know. All in all though, compared to the other towns in this game, Old Kazuto is super unique. It's the only one that's in ruins, and the only place where enemies roam freely instead of NPCs. Upon making our way to New Kazuto, we find that we need to uncover the hidden village by using our hammer item on a patch of trees. Yeah, definitely a strange way to uncover the path to a village, even by cryptic NES standards. New Kazuto isn't any stranger than the old variants, where the biggest standout here is we learn a spell from the Old Kazuto old man's twin brother? I don't know, these guys look identical. The least Nintendo could do is change the color of their cloaks, or make one of their beards a little less animated. But anyway, guess what the spell is called that we learn? The spell. Not exactly the most creative name, but okay. My actual pick for the weirdest location in this game goes to a graveyard found in Saria Town, where upon reading one of the graves in the Japanese version of the game, the writing translates to, "Here lies Lotto," where Lotto is the hero in Dragon Quest. Final Fantasy did the same thing for the hero of The Legend of Zelda, where in the town of Elfheim, a grave reads, "Here lies Link." It's super interesting that this crossover exists, and I always found it very bizarre and strange whenever creators of TV shows or video games would cross-reference characters like this. It's super trippy, and makes you wonder if these seemingly totally unrelated franchises are somehow linked. Like, did Lotto from Dragon Quest somehow adventure over to Hyrule where he made his untimely demise? And the same thing happened with Link venturing to the world of Final Fantasy? Also, another thing that's interesting about this is that this Graveyard Seeker was totally removed from the US version of Adventure of Link, where the grave doesn't read anything in that version. I believe that's because Dragon Quest wasn't very popular in the West at that time, so most players wouldn't understand the reference. But it's interesting that Nintendo didn't make the grave mention a different well-known Nintendo character like Mario or somebody else. Anyway, moving on to the next game. At its core, A Link to the Past offers a very standard Legend of Zelda experience. You have your typical gain and capture Zelda plot where Link has to beat several self-contained dungeons and bosses to eventually beat the game, but there's a location that stands beyond all others as the weirdest in the game and debatably the weirdest in the entire Zelda franchise. And that is the Chris Houlihan Room. The Chris Houlihan Room is a room that can be accessed in A Link to the Past that contains 45 blue rupees, or 225 rupees, and a telepathic box that says, "My name is Chris Houlihan, this is my top secret room. Keep it between us, okay?" What makes this room weird is not only some random unknown character named Chris declaring the room as his. The room is actually insanely difficult to access, where one must perform glitches to get to it. There's multiple ways to access this room, but most involve running around the screen with the Pegasus boots. And once an error in Link's Y coordinate is detected, he'll be sent to the secret room, which acts as a failsafe room which prevents the game from crashing. When A Link to the Past initially came out, handfuls of random people would accidentally discover this glitch room and were extremely confused because Nintendo gave no indication that this room existed at the time. After reading through Nintendo Power magazines from the 90s, it was discovered that this Chris Houlihan character was evidently a winner of a Nintendo Power contest called the Warmech Challenge, where he had to take a picture of a Warmech enemy in Final Fantasy and mail it to Nintendo as evidence. And one of those people who mailed in the picture would win the prize of having their name coded into a Nintendo game. Nintendo would not officially announce the winner of this challenge until a whole 6 years after A Link to the Past was released, where in a February 1998 issue of Nintendo Power, a passage reads, "In 1992, Nintendo Power Contest winner Chris Houlihan secured his place in gaming history by having his name featured in a hidden area in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past." Nintendo waiting so long to announce a winner of this challenge adds to the obscurity of the room, and the fact that we don't know the true identity of this Chris Houlihan character even to this day, that adds to the strangeness even more. Some believe Chris Houlihan may be a made-up name or a developer's relative because he was never confirmed to be a real person. Many Nintendo Power Contest winners would have pictures taken of them and put into the magazines, so it's not like Nintendo was known to be secretive about their contest winners. My opinion is that Chris Houlihan is a real person, and he or his parents at the time did not want his identity made public for privacy reasons. And these privacy reasons could be why he hasn't come public about his identity today. But I guess we may never know the truth. I actually made a deep dive video on the Chris Houlihan room about a couple years ago, so make sure to check that out if you want to hear more on this topic. So with that, let's move on to the next game. Link's Awakening is weird. There's a bunch of Mario enemies. It's the first Zelda game to not take place in Hyrule. You witness Link's failed love life, where his iconic personality trait of not speaking prevents him from having any meaningful connection with anyone. It's a great time. For the weirdest location, I'll have to choose the location that's right on the box art of this game, the Windfish's Egg. I know this game has been out for ages, but if you don't want the end spoiled, I would skip ahead a bit. The Windfish's Egg is the final location you go to in the game after beating all dungeons, and once playing all siren instruments in front of it, a path will blast open, and you can take on the final dungeon of the game. What makes this final dungeon strange, and not like many of the others in the series, is most of its puzzles is completed outside of it throughout the overworld map. There's this long trading sequence you need to do, which ends in you getting the magnifying glass, which can be used on a book in Mabe Village which details the correct path you need to take in the Windfish's Egg. So sort of a Lost Woods scenario, where you have to take the correct path to get through it. You would think a trading sequence that culminates to the climax and final boss fight of the game would be some epic meaningful questline, but some of the things this game expects you to do are actually pretty goofy. So, you went to Ridka Holland Island of the Nightmares and bring peace back to the world? Well, first you need to help a goat lady catfish a poor old man into thinking he's having relations with Princess Peach. And give Tarin a stick so he can poke a bunch of raging bees, which results in him getting chased off screen by them. So after performing honorable duties such as these, the game thinks, alright, you've earned a rite of passage, and lets you take on the final boss. Also, once you actually manage to beat the final boss, you learn that the windfish is actually a flying whale which looks like something pulled straight from a Dr. Seuss book. Also, what's totally bizarre is whales are mammals and don't even lay eggs in real life, so this thing evidently breaks all laws of nature having an egg, and a polka dotted one at that. So yeah, this place doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So now let's move on to the next game. Ocarina of Time not only revolutionized the gaming industry with its 3D exploration and controls. Its world is massive with dozens of iconic locations that we can pull from and choosing the weirdest in the game. Before I cover the strangest location, I want to cover one honorable mention where we have the Lakeside Laboratory in the Lake Hylia area. There's an elderly lady who dwells here that looks batshit crazy in her own right, but what really makes this place strange is what dwells at the bottom of the pool inside the building. A motionless shark behind some iron bars. I grew up with Ocarina of Time on my 3DS back in the day, and I remember 12-year-old me being freaked out seeing this thing. The incentive of coming down here is a piece of heart you can obtain, and my guess is the devs put a shark here as a small gag to surprise unsuspecting players. But it's not like the shark actually does anything. It's also interesting to look at the N64 version of the shark, which looks a little more ominous, being further back behind the bars and being a lower resolution image. I think the fact that it doesn't move makes it even weirder because many sharks need to keep moving in order to breathe. So this thing may just be a dead shark locked under this crazy lady's house. I know limitations of the N64 hardware probably forced Nintendo into not being able to animate it, but if it was real life, I feel like this thing probably wouldn't be alive down here. For the strangest area in the game, I've chosen a pretty broad area where you have the Lost Woods, which includes the Lost Woods Maze, Sacred Forest Meadow, and Forest Temple. The Lost Woods is no stranger to the Zelda series, as it has appeared in several games and wasn't even introduced in Ocarina of Time, as it originally appeared in the very first Zelda game. To traverse through the Ocarina of Time variant, the player must listen to the music and follow the path where Siria's song can be heard. So it's a pretty simple gameplay mechanic, but the strangeness revolves around the lore behind the Lost Woods in this game. As a part of the game's trading sequence for the Bigoran Sword, the player must visit an NPC named Grog in the Lost Woods who gives Link an odd mushroom that he must deliver to the Kakariko Potion Shop lady. Upon doing so, she gives Link an odd potion, but once the player returns to Grog, he is nowhere to be found, and the Kokiri Fado can be found where he once was. She informs the player that non-Kokiri who wandered in the forest end up turning into Stalfos, and ponders that fate may have fallen upon Grog, as he cannot be seen anymore. But dang, imagine that fate. Getting lost in a forest and being transformed into a hostile skeleton monster. A fate worse than death. What's also strange is Link is technically a Hylian and not a Kokiri, so he should be turned into a Stalfos himself, but isn't. Even after getting lost in the woods, the player is able to be teleported to the beginning of it without any major repercussions. The game never gives any reasons for this, but it could be because Link is under some sort of protection by the Great Deku Tree because it's his duty to save Hyrule. Or the forest could consider him a Kokiri because he was raised in the forest at such a young age. So once actually making it through the Lost Woods maze, the player makes it to Sacred Forest Meadow, which houses a very strange hidden grotto that I didn't even discover playing this game as a kid. Right at the entrance of Sacred Forest Meadow, if you drop a bomb, you can fall in a hole to uncover an otherworldly cave. The contents inside are simple enough, where you can kill 2 wolfos to earn yourself a chest with rupees. But the walls, ceiling, and floor look nothing like standard grottos you see in the game. The walls look like some sort of naturally occurring crystal cave, which contrasts with the ceiling and floor, which obviously look man-made. Was this some sort of secret bunker at some point? That could make sense being located so close to the clearly man-made Forest Temple. The Forest Temple also adds to the strangeness of the Lost Woods due to its haunting, eerie-sounding melody coupled with its trippy gameplay mechanic of needing to hit switches to twist hallways to walk on walls to access new areas. The place is also clearly haunted, where there are a few ghosts that dwell here the player needs to kill. The game also doesn't really explain what the Forest Temple used to be. It was taken over by the forest, but it clearly was some sort of mansion or fortress in its heyday. But over many years, it deteriorated into an ominous temple full of undead Stalfos, who were once human that unfortunately got lost in the forest. Majora's Mask was actually a really hard game for me to pick the weirdest location, because almost every single location in the game has a bit of strangeness to it. You have the mystical Astral Observatory with its vibrant colors and magical atmosphere that sharply contrasts with the dark and damp sewers Link needs to explore before making his way to the surface. You also have Ikana Canyon with its ominous spectacle of a group of Gyptos circling a lone house on a mountain, or the Garo, who Link can encounter during combat, who have an elaborate code of honor. offing themselves before getting killed to, quote, die without leaving a corpse. One honorable mention location I want to touch on as being weird, that may not seem weird on surface level, but is incredibly disturbing the more you dig into it, is the Goron Graveyard. The Goron Graveyard actually consists of only one grave, belonging to Goron hero Darmani III, and can be found high above a cliff in the mountain village of Snowhead. So what's so strange about this place? Well, once you pull on Darmani's grave, the graveyard room will fill up with hot spring water. It's not really clear where this water is coming from, but it swells up from under the ground, likely mixing with Darmani's rotting corpse buried below. So yeah, not sanitary in the slightest. Like, if anyone so much as comes into physical contact with this stuff, they should be admitted into the ER. Also, what's worse is that in order to progress the story of this game, you have to dump this biomedical waste on multiple Gorons to thaw them out. And that's just in the base game. There's nothing stopping you from dumping this stuff wherever you want to. Want to poison the water for the citizens of Clocktown? Nothing stopping you there. Want to quiet this baby so that you can sit in silence for just a second? Well, that didn't work, but at least we tried. For the strangest location in this game, I'll have to choose a location that's staring down us menacingly during our entire playthrough. The moon. First off, at first glance, this thing is terrifying. When I first played this game when I was a kid, I got freaked out every time I happened to look up at its creepy face. And the fact that it gradually gets closer to you as you progress through the 3-day cycle is just the topping of an already bizarre experience. Eventually though, as you progress to the end of the game, you make your way to the clock tower mere minutes before the moon is about to make touchdown. Your heart is racing at this high stakes moment, confronting the Skull Kid with a timer so close to zero. And... well, that was unexpected. The inside of the moon is a peaceful grass field with no music, which contrasts vastly with most of the locations you find yourself previously exploring. There is no music, just kids running around playing games with each other. One would expect the inside of the moon to be a devilish hellscape due to the moon's outward appearance, but it's actually rather peaceful inside. There is also a lot of unexplained aspects about what goes on inside here that adds to the strangeness. Why are there kids running around, and why do they want Link to give them his masks? Why does a kid wearing Majora's Mask give Link the Fierce Deity Mask after Link hands over all his masks? The Fierce Deity Mask makes the final fight a cakewalk, so why would the final boss go so easy on Link? Also, what baffles me the most are the nuggets of wisdom that children give you after completing each of their mini-dungeons, which sort of seem like the kinds of things you find in fortune cookies. All the phrases are an amalgamation of contemplating what makes others happy and how one's actions affect others they interact with, but the most unsettling quote comes from the twin mold child, which reads, "Your true face. What kind of face is it? I wonder. The face under your mask. Is that your true face?" During the whole game, you become others by wearing their faces, and by the end of it, you're asked which face is the real you. And by the time you're asked that question, Link isn't even wearing a mask, which hints there's a deeper meaning behind this question. Is the child hinting that Link is wearing the metaphorical mask of a hero? And if that makes him a hero, is it still considered a mask? It really makes you think, and this moon area of the game really doesn't explain itself, which adds to the strangeness. Oracle of Seasons offers a rather traditional 2D Zelda experience, as many of the aspects in this game were inspired by the very first Zelda game on the NES, so it was a little challenging to think of weird and obscure places at first. That was until I remember the entire world the player has to explore beneath the main overworld, the land of Subrosia, which takes a spot as the weirdest location in the game for me. Subrosia is a subterranean lava world the player has to access through portals throughout their quest to save Holodrum. What makes this place strange are the species that dwell here, the Subrosians, who are cloaked figures with large eyes that never reveal their identity under their robes. They're obviously not human, as they can be found just chilling in lava like they're in a jacuzzi, which would turn any regular person to ash. But they're not totally otherworldly, as they can be seen engaging in similar activities as the people on the surface, such as building houses and businesses such as a blacksmith or even a shop where they can exchange ore chunks for currency instead of rupees. This is just a theory I came up with, but I think the Subrosians might belong to the same family as the Gorons, as both can withstand intense heat. In the late game of Oracle of Ages, you can even find a Subrosian named Rosa in the Goron dance hall just chilling with some Gorons. And both the Gorons and Subrosians have a dancing minigame you can play, so they are obviously drawn to similar activities. So maybe under those mysterious cloaks hides a species that resembles the Gorons. I guess we may never know. One honorable mention for the weirdest location in Oracle of Ages I have to talk about is Symmetry Village, where everything in the village is a perfect mirror image over the y-axis. The terrain, buildings, heck, even the people found a way to be mirror images of themselves. Not much is known why the village is perfectly symmetrical, but I'm guessing Capcom just thought it would be funny and quirky and thought players would get a kick out of it. The weirdest location in the game that actually kind of disturbed me the first time I encountered it is the Wild Tokay Museum, which is found on Crescent Island in the present. Inside the museum, you can find a Tokay, who explains that location was in use a long time ago, which acts as a hint to the player to visit that location in the past to play the Wild Tokay minigame. The goal of the minigame is to toss food to hungry Tokay, and if you don't miss tossing food to the Tokay, you get a prize. But the real strange and creepy aspect about the museum in the present are these stuffed dead corpses of Tokay propped up as display pieces. I mean, these things are dead bodies, right? They look identical to the Tokay you can talk to that's alive in the center of the room. There's nothing indicating they're fake statues of Tokay. So either the Tokay are taxidermists, or they are really good at making lifelike statues of themselves. Also, why would they even feel the need to make this place a museum of all places? A minigame where you toss meat at them? Like they couldn't think of anything more impactful or significant in their past they could have made into a museum instead? These guys don't seem the brightest, as you have to endure a convoluted trading sequence to get all of your stuff they stole from you, so I guess I shouldn't expect too much out of them. Now we have the first multiplayer Zelda game I'll cover of 4 Swords. This game is super short without many locations, but in doing research for this video, I found the anniversary edition for this game that came out for the 3DS has quite a bit of extra locations compared to the original for the Game Boy Advance. And one of these extra locations takes a place as the weirdest in the game, where we have the Realm of Memories, which opens up after beating the base game for the first time. The Realm of Memories consists of stages heavily inspired by the original Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, and A Link to the Past, where all the sprites even look like the games they are a callback for. It's super cool being able to traverse the world of retro Zelda games with friends in multiplayer, and it is a bit unorthodox to see in a Zelda game. It sorta reminds me of those 2D 8-bit sections in Mario Odyssey which are callbacks to the original Super Mario Bros. And I wish modern Zelda games would incorporate little callback Easter egg gameplay mechanics like this in the modern games. All we ever get nowadays is the occasional costume unlockable reference. So let's move on to the next game. The Wind Waker isn't like most other Zelda games, so I had fun picking the weirdest location for this game. There's so many interesting places and quirky characters in this game that make playing this game such a fun experience. Before I get into the strangest location in the game, I want to touch on an honorable mention where we have Tingle Island. By the time Wind Waker released, Tingle was an established character in the Zelda franchise. He first appeared in Majora's Mask as a man who pretends to be a fairy, and you can't help but feel sad for the guy. He's a 35-year-old man who dresses up in a goofy costume and has no real ambitions in life that make him a productive member of society. Well, that pity feeling flips upside down as he is a ruthless psychopath in Wind Waker. He builds a tower for himself on his island and forces his brothers to manually spin the tower around all day long every single day, all while Tingle is delusional to his brother's suffering, or he might just not care as he claims fairy magic makes the tower spin around and not the blood, sweat, and tears of his family. Also, when you talk to his brothers, they are obviously brainwashed and speak to you as slaves and claim that Tingle is nice to them when you buy Tingle's maps. Also, what's absurd is I don't think them pushing the tower's head around is even doing anything besides fueling Tingle's twisted desires of others submitting to his requests. Like the tower's head spinning around isn't exactly accomplishing anything. Also, Tingle's ruthlessness isn't aimed towards just his brothers, as Tingle charges the player absurd prices for his maps, causing many players to despise this part of the game. So yeah, this place is weird, largely due to Tingle's drastic shift in character in this game. The strangest location in the game for me though goes to the Private Oasis, which is a small island paradise with a cabana and an outdoor beach area. This place is extremely weird. First of all, the island belongs to Mrs. Mary, a schoolteacher resident of Windfall Island. I don't know how a schoolteacher of all people could afford their very own private island, but what baffles me even more is she's willing to give to Link in exchange for a measly 20 joy pendants, which are perhaps the easiest collectible to obtain in the game. Yeah, this lady is just giving this place away. So once at the island, and upon entering the cabana, you learn there's a butler that dwells in there that's a ghost? You never see the guy, but the camera pans over to a cutout of a human every time he talks. So maybe his soul is inside the house or something, I don't know. It's not really explained. He does give you rupees for completing block-shifting puzzles, so I guess that's cool. Also, apparently getting the deed for the place comes with owning your very own underground dungeon with traps and monsters. What devilish activities has Mrs. Mary conducted down here during her stay? I honestly don't even want to think about it. Now we move on to the second multiplayer Zelda game of Four Swords Adventures. This might be the most tame out of all the Zelda games in this video, as this game pretty much just consists of traversing traditional 2D Zelda terrain with your friends as you collect Force Gems. The weirdest location for me goes to Tingle Tower. Yes, Tingle Tower actually makes a return from Wind Waker. In Four Swords Adventures, Tingle Tower acts as a minigame hub where you can play minigames to compete with your friends. Now on service level, a minigame hub might seem pretty tame and ordinary, but it's actually a little disturbing some of the things Mastermind Tingle has the four links compete against each other in. Like he has them smashing each other with hammers, and playing volleyball with whatever monstrosity this thing is supposed to be. This giant pig lady is not something seen in the base game, so I could only imagine it's something Tingle created in that demented little mind of his. Or maybe I'm just off-put by the horrors we witnessed him perform in Wind Waker. That could very well just be it. Continuing with the 2D Zelda theme, we have the Minish Cap up next. For the weirdest location in this game, we have a bit of a late game area where my choice is Royal Valley, which is a spooky, foggy, wooded area the player has to traverse in their main quest. You end up meeting the ghost of King Gustav, an ancient king of Hyrule who assists Link on his quest to defeat Vaati. I think it's very strange how the resting place of an early king of Hyrule is so dark and overridden with evil monsters. You would think a royal graveyard would be protected by guards and made a safe and sacred place. I also think it's absurd that this place puts up such a creepy and ominous atmosphere, but one of the main enemies you find here licks the player as a form of an attack. Like, how does that make any sense? Also, it's interesting that there's only one human who lives in this place, where you have Dampé the Gravedigger. According to his in-game figurine, he has, quote, the power to speak with the dead, which I find interesting. Is that just referring to Dampé being able to talk with the ghosts in the graveyard? Because even Link has the power to do that, as you're able to fuse kinstones with the friendly ghosts that dwell there. Or has Dampé somehow bestowed some gift of being able to communicate with the dead at some more advanced level after living in the graveyard for such a long time? It makes you think, and I wonder if Dampé is hiding some secret gift that he doesn't speak of. Twilight Princess puts on a serious and mature tone throughout most of the game, but there are some really strange places that don't fall in line with the dark theme of the game. One honorable mention of a strange location such as this is Mallow Mart, particularly the one in Hyrule Castle Town. Mallow Mart starts out as a rather generic shop in Kakariko Village, which is run by a toddler Hylian named Mallow, and after spending thousands of rupees to fund Mallow Mart's business ventures, the shop will also open up in Hyrule Castle Town, albeit with a bit more color this time around, and a catchy, vibrant theme song to boot. I was so caught off guard when I discovered this place when I was a kid, and it's definitely apparent where Link's plethora of rupees were going, because this place is definitely very extra. And you gotta love all the pictures of Mallow hung up around the place for the little extra bit of advertising. Keeping in the realm of Hyrule Castle Town, another honorable mention weird location goes to Agatha's Castle, home of a little girl named Agatha who collects golden bugs the player brings her so that she can attend her ball. Similar to Tingle, this character is delusional, and it baffles me how much money this girl has because she gives Link hundreds upon hundreds of rupees after Link gives all the golden bugs to her. It also blows my mind that she can afford living in this place, which is essentially prime real estate being in Hyrule Castle Town and all. Or I don't know if her parents left her for whatever reasons, and left her a fortune because there is no indication that Agatha lives with anyone. The weirdest location for me though goes to a late game dungeon where we have City in the Sky. City in the Sky is set in the heavens, where the player must be launched out of a giant cannon to be able to reach it. And once in the city, you're greeted with an interesting species to say the least. These are the Uka, which are the main aspect that make this place truly bizarre. They operate sort of like cuckoos, allowing Link to glide around once picked up, but their human-like heads make them very strange and borderline creepy. Also, the fact that they can defy the laws of physics and walk on walls is the cherry on top. I also think it's very strange how the Uka were able to construct such a sophisticated city, powered by massive machinery that uses the wind to run itself. The Uka are obviously very smart creatures, but they don't exactly have hands and are pretty weak, so I don't see how they were able to construct massive infrastructure such as this. Next up, we have the sequel to Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass for the DS. Similar to Wind Waker, this game is really goofy with a lot of zany characters and over-the-top plot elements which translate to some strange locations. The first of these, that takes the honorable mention spots, is an island with a lot of very weird elements, Bannon Island. The resident of this island that you first meet is a fisherman called the Old Wayfarer who hosts a fishing side quest where you can show him fish you caught for various rewards. What makes this guy super weird, and this island weird in general, are the events leading up to this fishing quest. So when you first meet the guy, he tells you that he came to the island in search for the mythical mermaid, and even built a pool in his house in preparation for when he, quote, captures her. So you then walk outside and occasionally see a mermaid creature at the edge of the screen in the water, and she swims away if you come too close. But if you are an absolute menace and are quick enough, you can smack her on the head with your boomerang, which causes her to get stunned so that you can talk to her. Upon talking to her, she learns about the Old Wayfarer, is mesmerized by him, and decides she wants to pay him a visit because she thinks wayfaring tales are cool and she thinks that they are fated to meet each other. So when you go back to the guy's house, you see the girl there, who is actually pretending to be a mermaid at this point, and the guy is overcome with joy because he states that he found the mermaid of his dreams. What's even more disturbing though, is he gives you his fishing rod because he doesn't need it anymore because he was planning on catching the mermaid with it, but because he thinks he captured the mermaid, he gives it to the player. So basically Link pimps out a girl dressed as a mermaid to an old dirty sailor in exchange for his fishing rod. Very interesting, Nintendo. Also, are we just going to ignore how this lady floated all the way across the ocean from her home island in an inner tube of all things? Like, Bannon Island only has one house on it. There's no way she's from here. Another strange aspect about this island is one of the most hidden minigames in the Zelda franchise. The canon minigame hosted by Salvatore, which is only unlocked after bombing a hidden passage and fighting through some enemies in a cave. Like, does this guy hate getting business or something? You literally have to fight for your life to get to the guy. Like, there's no way this guy has seen any other customers besides Link at this point. For the weirdest location in the game, we have a secret optional island called DS Island, which, well, looks like a Nintendo DS. Like, seriously, this thing's got a top and bottom screen along with a D-pad and face buttons. Even the dock your boat stops next to resembles a stylus sticking out of the DS system. The whole breaking the fourth wall thing while walking on a DS island while playing the game on a DS is definitely the pinnacle of strange, but there are a couple more Easter eggs that make this place a little more interesting. If you smack a small statue on the island, it tells you something is buried under the lower screen's menu button, and if you try digging at where the menu button would be on your DS, you're rewarded with a courage gem. And there's another secret on this island that I totally missed as a kid, where if you blow into the microphone while standing on the spot of the island representing the microphone, you'll be rewarded with a chest that contains a big gold rupee. Gotta love the attention to detail here. And now we move on to the sister game of Phantom Hourglass. Even though Spirit Tracks does not take place on the open sea, there's a lot of aspects that are similar in both games. Where Spirit Tracks has stations you can stop while riding on your train, which takes the place of Phantom Hourglass's islands you can access while on your ship. There's a couple of strange stations that I want to touch on for Spirit Tracks, where an honorable mention weird station goes to Rabbit Land Rescue, home to a guy dressed as a rabbit, who kicks Link off on a side quest where you're instructed to bring wild rabbits you catch along your journey so that they can have a home. And according to the rabbit costume guy, fittingly named Bunnyo, Rabbit Land Rescue is a place for people to come and relax and forget about their troubles by frolicking with the bunnies. Can't relate, but whatever makes you happy, my guy. And at least this guy rewards Link handsomely, where he's absolutely stacked with rewards that are given to the player after rounding up bunnies. The weirdest location in the game goes to an optional secret station that many people don't even come across while playing this game casually, Disorientation Station, which has a very creepy and deep narrative that I'm surprised to see in an optional location of all places. This station can be found in the northwestern section of the Fire Realm, and upon arriving at the island, you can find a soldier standing outside of a cave entrance. He tells the player that he and his friend came to the island in search for a treasure, but while they were searching for it, they came across a monstrous plant which caused him to get frightened and run away, leaving his friend behind. The soldier asks Link to search for his friends, and if he finds the treasure, he says Link can keep it. The cave is sort of like a Lost Woods scenario where you have to take the correct path to get to the treasure. Eventually, you can find a room with some fire babas, and if you play the Song of Discovery on a certain tile, a treasure chest will appear containing an alchemy stone, aka the golden treasure the soldier was talking about. But what makes this place truly strange is the fate of the soldier's friends. If you have a keen eye while in the maze, you will stumble across a stone with a message written by the soldier's lost friend. The message reads, "To my eternal friend and treasure hunting partner, I can't seem to find a way out. I believe I am hopelessly lost. I don't think I have much longer left, so I want to apologize to you. I had originally intended to claim the treasure for myself, even though you always looked out for me. When you ran off, I thought nothing of it and went on to find the treasure. I was a fool. I want you to know that you shouldn't waste any worry on me. Just move on with your life, and please, think of me every once in a while. You are, were, and will always be my dearest friends. Farewell. Wow, that was depressing. And the kind of depressing that you don't usually see in a Zelda game. Usually when NPCs die, there's just a puff of comical smoke, but you're able to read the last words of someone who is on the brink of death because they can't find themselves out of the labyrinth. But at least we have some closure on the lost soldier, where once reporting the news to the soldier outside the cave, he'll show his gratitude towards a player and reflects on his friend's last moments and gives Link a small reward. So yeah, pretty deep stuff. Also, are we just going to ignore how these soldiers were able to arrive at this station that's in the middle of nowhere? There's no other trains carrying passengers around other than Link's train, so I'm guessing they walked the whole way from Hyrule Castle Town? That's some serious dedication right there. Anyway, let's move on to the next game. Skyward Sword is up next, and man, this game has some weird characters. Possibly the weirdest bunch in all of Zelda. You've got Betro, the gentle giant who lives below Skyloft. Petrus, the lady who is madly in love with Link even though Link doesn't return the affection. And this, well, Link Copycat who obviously visited the Lumpy Pumpkin one too many times. But as far as weird locations go, this game doesn't have too many of them. But there is one standout where you have Fun Fun Island, a colorful floating island in the sky southwest of Skyloft. This island is home to one individual, a clown, who hosts a minigame where you're launched out of a cannon and have to land on a spinning island to try and earn rupees. This guy is not only ridiculous, but the idea of Link being shot out of a cannon at hundreds of miles per hour from a standstill makes me wonder if Link's skin is made out of steel. Like any ordinary person would be ripped to shreds getting launched out of this thing. Also, how did this floating eyesore of an island even get here? Did someone construct it? I doubt this guy is capable of constructing a floating island of all people. The story goes that the goddess Hylia raised portions of Hyrule above the clouds in an attempt to protect parts of the land from demonic horrors that rose from under the ground. So I guess Hylia saw this rupee wheel game and thought it had to be protected by evil monsters because it's that important? I guess that's what happened, but who really knows? Anyway, let's move on to the next game. A Link Between Worlds is up next, which borrows a lot of locations from A Link to the Past, as it is a reimagining of the SNES game. There is no Chris Houlihan room in the 3DS game unfortunately, but there is a pretty strange area that takes the weirdest spot location, where you have Thieves Town located in Lorule, which acts as the evil counterpart to Kakariko Village in Hyrule. This place is very similar to the Village of Outcasts from A Link to the Past's Dark World, where you have hostile enemies and dilapidated buildings occupied by sketchy people. But what really makes this village from A Link Between Worlds really stand out are a group called the Masked Followers. The Masked Followers are essentially a cult led by the Masked Elder who preaches down to his followers to resist their corruption of thievery and wear the masks of monsters instead. He states wearing these masks will bring them salvation from Lorule's deteriorating world, and one of the followers even encourages Link to wear a mask to be saved. Literal cults such as these are very rare to see in Zelda games. So these guys were super interesting to come across while I was playing the game. I guess they're sort of a good cult in that they do not support thievery, so hats off to them for that. It is a bit ironic though that they reside in Thieves Town in all places when they're so against thievery. I also think the whole pretending to be a monster ideology is a bit bizarre. I guess they see Lorule as so overrun with monsters that they believe the best way to survive is to walk among the monsters and be one of them? That's some Walking Dead Whisperer stuff right there. Also, apparently their catchphrase is Mumbo Jumbo, which they end pretty much all conversations with saying. That's absolutely bizarre and pretty ironic, because Mumbo Jumbo literally means meaningless incantation or ritual, and is oftentimes used in a religious context. So they're all basically saying their cult has no meaning, which I find pretty hilarious. Alright, let's move on to the next game. Triforce Heroes is up next, the last multiplayer game we'll be covering in this video. Similar to the other two co-op Zelda games we covered previously, this game mostly consists of the player fighting through rather linear stages with their buddies. The stages in this game are all pretty ordinary, but the weirdest location title goes to a location in the Hytopia hub area, which is actually very close to where you first take control of Link, where we have the area with this tree right here. What's so special about this tree, you may ask? Well, the weirdness kicks in when you interact with it, where you'll find text that reads, "Why are there so many cicada shells on this tree and this tree alone? Are these cicada shells a reference to something? And why are there cicada shells on this tree of all places?" It's not like cicadas are ever really present in the Zelda universe, other than I guess the sand cicada bug you collect in Skyward Sword, which isn't really all that special. It's not like the tree you find them on in Triforce Heroes is even in a desert area, so that link to Skyward Sword wouldn't really make any sense. Some believe these cicada shells are a reference to the cicadas you can find here in Flounder Heights and Splatoon, released for the Wii U, where cicadas can be heard once you get close to a tree and can only be heard in that one tree alone. Nobody knows the true meaning of these cicadas in Triforce Heroes, but I think the purpose of it being a fun little Easter egg reference with Splatoon is probably the most probable. Sort of like how Kazumi Totaka hides a short tune called the Totaka's Song in games he works on, such as clicking on the O on the title screen in Mario Paint for the Super Nintendo. Or going to the training room controller configuration screen in Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube and waiting 3.5 minutes. Also, this reference between Triforce Heroes and Splatoon could make sense because the games were released in the same year, with Splatoon coming out in May of 2015 and Triforce Heroes coming out in October of 2015. So it's entirely possible some of the same people working on both games at Nintendo put the cicada reference in both games to sort of leave their personal stamp on the games. But that's all speculation, don't quote me on that. Also, another interesting aspect about these cicadas in Triforce Heroes is in an update to the game, an extra bit of text was added when you interact with the tree, where it tells you how many cicada shells are on the tree, and the amount of shells on the tree can vary. The game does not directly tell you this, but it has been discovered that the number of cicada shells on the tree are linked to how many hero points a player has accumulated, where one can gain hero points by completing stages with their buddies. So yeah, this tree is a very strange location in the game, which definitely confused me as a kid, and we still don't really know why Nintendo decided to link the number of cicada shells with the amount of hero points players have. And maybe we will never know. So with that, let's move on to the next game. Perhaps the most popular Zelda game made thus far, at least in terms of sales numbers, Breath of the Wild. And what a massive world to choose the weirdest location. Like, I played this game for at least 200 hours when it first came out, and I didn't really even come all that close to exploring every location in the game. I'll get to the strangest location in a second, but an honorable mention that I have to touch on is the Horse God Fountain, which can be found southeast of Lake Hylia. And man oh man, does this place give me the creeps. It's actually pretty hidden, being found after traveling through a grassy path at the base of some cliffs. Upon first glance, it looks to be a standard fairy fountain, but upon paying 1,000 rupees, you find the Great Fairy, or lack thereof, is actually a ghostly horse monster with floating human-like hands that can perform magic to revive horses that die during combat, or that die by one's own hands. The horse god has got you covered. But I find this place so interesting because it's unorthodox in Zelda games that your horses can straight up die. Like in pretty much all Zelda games prior, your horse is an unstoppable tank war machine, and the fact that your horses can be revived by this thing is incredibly bizarre. Like, does its revival magic stop at horses? I guess that makes sense because it's called the Horse God and has this ridiculous getup, but why stop at horses? Why not revive the 4 champions or King Rahome who were killed by Ganon's forces? Why did the horses get the special treatment? I guess we may never know. For the weirdest location in the game, I'll go with one that isn't super well known, where we have Mekar Island, a small island located just west of the Korok Forest, which was named after the Wind Sage from Wind Waker, Mekar. This island consists of a lone decaying tree, a place the player can make a campfire, a singular rock, and piles of bone laid throughout. During the daytime, you can encounter some choo-choo enemies, but during nighttime, several stall enemies appear which wield rather strong gear, more powerful than standard weapons you'd expect stall enemies to have. We're talking steel bows, ice arrows, and even bomb arrows. And what do you get when you kill all these difficult enemies? Absolutely nothing. Not even a Korok seed is hidden here. It's very strange there isn't any sort of reward on this island. as unique locations such as this island would normally contain some sort of powerful weapon or rare treasure considering how out of the way the player has to go to even come to this place. Like when you try to paraglide over to it, wind blows against you from all directions of the island, which makes it difficult to reach. So all of this is why many players believe there is something more to this island compared to what the devs are letting on. Some go as far to believe this lone tree in the middle of the island is supposed to represent the decaying, hollowed out tree that is the first dungeon in the original Zelda 1 for the NES. And the 4 smaller trees around it represent the 4 smaller trees surrounding the exterior of the dungeon in Zelda 1. And the stall enemies represent the Stalfos you have to fight in that dungeon near the entrance. While that is possible, I think it's a bit of a stretch since you can't actually go inside the lone tree. I think this island solely acts as a reference to the Wind Waker, where the decaying tree in the middle of the island is supposed to represent where Makar, the Wind Sage, died. Korok bodies do resemble trees, so it makes sense this dying tree is supposed to represent Makar, and that theory does hold up with the island being named Mekar Island. Also, perhaps the stall enemies that appear on the island at night are what led to Makar meeting his untimely demise, as he found himself at the wrong place at the wrong time. Also, if you get on top of the lone tree, you can experience a strong gust of wind blowing directly west, and that's the only part of the island where you can experience this strong gust of wind, which I find interesting. Makar from the Wind Waker is the Wind Sage, so this gust of wind could represent Makar's act from beyond the grave to help the player leave this nasty island with terrible monsters by paragliding out of there. But that's just a theory. Let me know what you all think about this island. This lone tree has to represent something, I feel like. And why is a campfire set up so nicely here, just waiting to be lit on fire? Was this island previously inhabited by some Hylian who camped there for the night and got murdered by some stall enemies, and that explains a pile of bones? I guess maybe we'll never know for sure. For now, let's move on to the next game. And now we have the sequel to Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, which somehow finds a way to more than double the size of an already massive game. I'll first blast through a few honorable mentions that I have to touch on before I get to the weirdest location pick. We have a secret room in the Great Deku Tree, which can be accessed by using the Ascend ability. Like, how did this Korok get into this sealed off room, and why is there a bed here? I mean, I guess the little guy has to sleep, but why is it sealed off from the rest of his friends? We've also got Mountain Crow Island just west of Hyrule Castle. This island may just seem like a barren rock at first glance, but it has random piles of flint and arrows lying about for some strange reason. But upon looking closer, one can discover there are numerous crows that can be spotted bringing these items to the island as some sort of nest or stockpile. This is super interesting because crows are enemies in the Zelda franchise known to steal items from players such as rupees and whatnot, so it's super cool to be able to stumble across their stockpile of resources they've scavenged. Also, I cannot help but touch on this massive whirlpool you can stumble across in Lake Hylia. Whirlpools have trained many veteran Zelda players to stay far away from these aquatic vortexes, but upon getting sucked into this one can discover a hidden cave with a shrine in it, believe it or not. But for the absolute weirdest location in this absolute beast of a game, I'll have to go with Bloopy Burrow, which can be found in the depths. Bloopies are already super weird in this game, these elusive creatures able to be hunted for rupees and can disappear in a blink of an eye. But a cave full of these guys? That's pretty crazy. And what's even more interesting is this is the only place in the depths where Bloopies can be found, along with cherry blossom trees, where we have the singular tree down here. But why do the Bloopies gather here, and why is this the only location in the depths they can be found? Is it some sort of special place? It is found below Satori Mountain on the surface, where Bloopies can be found as well, so I guess that makes sense. Also, Satori Mountain is a serene, almost sacred place on the surface, which was named in honor of Satoru Iwata, who played a pivotal role in Nintendo and died in 2015. But why would the Bloopies want to make their home in such a damp and depressing place like this in the depths? That I do not have the answer to. Well, let's move on to the next game. And the last game we have to cover for this video, and the latest Zelda game to be released, is Echoes of Wisdom, which presents as a typical 2D top-down Zelda game, but borrows many of the non-linear gameplay mechanics from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The world of this game is not as grand as the 3D Switch Zeldas, but it is larger than many other 2D Zelda games out there, so we have a lot of locations to choose from and picking the weirdest. For the strangest of these locations, I'm going to go pretty broad, where I'll go with the Still World. The Still World is a bizarre place made up of floating fragments of Hyrule that were taken by the rifts. So essentially, wherever a rift appears on the overworld, features of Hyrule are sucked into the Still World, but are not kept completely intact, where we get strange conglomerates of terrain mixed together without any real rhyme or reason, and the player must enter through rifts to get to the still world and rescue Tri's friends who can fix the rift and restore Hyrule back to its original state. But man, the still world is so trippy, and thank goodness we have echoes to help us navigate this place, because there's no way Zelda could traverse this place normally. You have trees growing out of the ground sideways, cubes of floating water, and a bottomless void of this swirling magenta stuff. Speaking of this backgrounds, am I the only one that thought this looked shockingly similar to the background in the final boss fight of Earthbound for the SNES? The colors are very similar, and you can sort of see similar swirl patterns between the two games. The swirls from Echoes of Wisdom are a bit non-uniform and scattered, but I couldn't help but be instantly reminded of the final boss fight against Gygus in Earthbound while playing through these still world sections. Even the paths leading up to the final boss fights are super similar between the two games. Both involve needing to walk through long stretches of this fleshy looking substance until you eventually reach the final stand. In Earthbound, the path is found in the Cave of the Past, which leads to the Devil's Machine that contains Gygus, while the path in Echoes of Wisdom is found in the Still World and leads to the final fight against Null. And this link becomes even stranger if you know the lore behind the inspiration for the Earthbound's final boss fight. So the story goes that Earthbound's developer, Shigesato Itoi, accidentally walked into an adult movie when he was a kid, which deeply traumatized him. He saw a scene of a lady being strangled during a lovemaking scene, and he used that memory as inspiration for the final fight against Gygus. So yeah, super weird stuff. Also, seeing the pale, petrified bodies of the people of Hyrule unfortunate enough to fall into the Still World just adds to the unsettling nature of this place. So that's it for the video. The weirdest location in every mainline The Legend of Zelda game. I hope you enjoyed watching, and let me know of your personal strangest location you've encountered in a Zelda game. I would love to hear it. So, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I have some absolute bangers of videos planned for the future similar to this one. And so with that, I'll see you in the next one.